In the bustling city of Charlotte, North Carolina, a small real estate office buzzed with activity. The fluorescent lights flickered over desks strewn with paperwork, while phones rang incessantly with potential clients seeking to sell or buy their homes. Among the agents was Elizabeth Jordan, a driven and ambitious woman in her early 40s, whose career was her life's focus. Little did she know that her world was about to change forever. Elizabeth was known for her tenacity and fierce determination. She wore tailored suits and kept her hair perfectly styled, projecting an aura of confidence. But inside, Elizabeth felt a growing emptiness. Her marriage with Tony, someone she once loved fiercely, had grown stale and distant. With work as an escape, she had unconsciously allowed her relationship with her husband to fade into the background. Tony, a good man and a devoted father, was increasingly frustrated with the unraveling bond between them. One day, after a particularly long day at work, Elizabeth returned home to find Tony in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Their teenage daughter, Danielle, was nowhere to be found, likely using her phone in her room, lost in the world of social media. As Elizabeth entered, she sensed the tension in the air. Conversations were forced, and laughter felt obligatory. They barely talked about their day, and every attempt to connect seemed to push them further apart. As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth began to notice signs of a deeper crisis in her marriage. She found texts on Tony's phone that hinted at concerns about their relationship, and her stomach sank with dread. She tried to confront him, but the conversation ended in arguments that echoed in the hallways of their home. Frustrated, she decided to bury herself in her work rather than confront her crumbling marriage. One evening, while attending a work seminar, Elizabeth met Clara, a seasoned real estate agent and a woman of faith. Clara exuded a warmth and grace that intrigued Elizabeth, and they struck up a conversation. Clara spoke passionately about her relationship with God and how prayer had transformed her life. Elizabeth scoffed at the idea, convinced that prayer was a relic of the past. But Clara's words lingered in her mind as the internal chaos of her life spiraled further. As Elizabeth sat in her car after the seminar, she felt a heaviness in her heart. Driving home, she noticed a small, dilapidated church on the corner. It seemed strangely inviting amidst the busy streets, and on a whim, she parked and entered the building. The faint scent of wood and candles greeted her as she stepped inside. The church was empty except for an elderly woman praying silently in the corner. Her heart stirred, and for the first time in years, Elizabeth closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. It was raw and unpolished, a plea for help in the chaos surrounding her. When she returned home, she found Tony sitting on the couch, watching TV, lost in his own world. Ignoring her efforts to connect, he hardened himself, retreating into a shell of quiet resignation. Elizabeth felt a mix of anger and sadness. One day, out of pure frustration, she vented to Clara about her struggles. Clara listened patiently, and then she offered Elizabeth a piece of advice that would change everything. "Have you ever tried praying for him?" Clara asked gently. Elizabeth frowned, the suggestion bouncing off her preconceived notions. "Pray for Tony. He's the one who needs to change, not me." But Clara persisted, explaining the power of prayer and how it could be a means of intercession, a way to seek divine intervention for the issues she faced. Inspired and desperate, Elizabeth decided to give it a try. That night, she sat in her fading home office, the walls lined with family photos, and closed her eyes. It was challenging at first. Her mind raced with distractions and reminders of her grievances. But she pressed on, slowly learning to surrender her frustrations and fill the void with prayers of hope, love, and understanding. Days turned into weeks, and with each night of prayer, Elizabeth found strength and clarity. She prayed not just for Tony but for herself, seeking insight into her own heart and motivations. It was a journey of self-discovery that forced her to confront her shortcomings and the complexities of her marriage. She began to soften her heart, recognizing that healing didn't require Tony to change first, it required her commitment to love unconditionally. Determined to rebuild their foundation, Elizabeth began to pay more attention to Tony. She made small gestures, cooking his favorite meals, leaving notes of encouragement, and showing appreciation for his efforts as a father. Noticing the change, Tony felt a mixture of surprise and confusion. While he wanted to reciprocate, he was unsure how to bridge the widening gap between them. One afternoon, they found themselves stuck in the house during a rainstorm. The tension hung heavy in the air, but Elizabeth took a chance. "Let's play a game," she suggested, pulling out an old board game from the shelf. Hesitant at first, Tony obliged and began to soften with each roll of the dice. Laughter echoed through the living room, and for a fleeting moment, the shadows receded. It felt good, challenging their usual silence and rekindling fond memories of their earlier years together. That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Elizabeth turned serious. Tony, she began tentatively, I want to talk about us. Tony looked at her, his eyes filled with expectation and uncertainty. As she opened up about her prayers and her desire to reconnect, a flicker of hope ignited within him. He had been longing for her to reach out, to show him that she still cared. Their conversation deepened, and as they shared their struggles and vulnerabilities, a sense of understanding blossomed. Tony, in turn, expressed his fears and frustrations, revealing that he felt neglected and unsure of how to bridge their emotional divide. Elizabeth listened intently, and though it was tentative, they slowly began the delicate dance of restoring their bond. However, their newfound connection did not come without its trials. Days of frustration still lingered, and old habits resurfaced. But Elizabeth had a secret. She had created a war room in a small closet in their home. Inspired by the idea of intentional prayer, she filled the space with notes, scripture, and reminders to pray for her husband and family. As life continued to test their resolve, Elizabeth turned to the war room whenever she felt overwhelmed. There, she would pour out her heart, seeking guidance and strength through diligent prayer. The closet became a sacred space, a retreat where she could exit the chaotic outside world and seek divine help. One crisp Saturday morning, the couple decided to spend the day together as a family, planning a short trip to a local amusement park. As they prepared in the living room, confusion bubbled when Danielle emerged with a long face, feeling uneasy about joining them. They noticed her distracted behavior and decided to address it openly. It was a pivotal moment, and Elizabeth guided the conversation skillfully, encouraging Danielle to share her feelings without judgment. What began as a potential conflict turned into a heartfelt discussion that allowed them to connect as a family. Elizabeth felt hope as they reassured their daughter, emphasizing the importance of communication and togetherness, resonating with all of them. The trip to the amusement park became a success, filled with laughter, shared experiences, and a revitalized family dynamic. Gradually, an undeniable shift occurred as both Elizabeth and Tony invested in their relationship through small yet meaningful acts, fueled by Elizabeth's consistent prayer life. They began to set aside regular time to talk and reconnect, sharing dreams, fears, and aspirations. However, it wasn't until Tony experienced a crisis within himself that true transformation began to take shape. One evening, Tony arrived home visibly shaken. An earlier encounter with a colleague had revealed what he had been subconsciously avoiding. His job was under threat, and layoffs loomed. The stress and uncertainty threatened to consume him, tightening the grip of fear. In the highly acclaimed film, War Room, directed by the Kendrick brothers, audiences are drawn into a gripping narrative that revolves around the power of prayer and faith. The story centers around a young couple, Elizabeth and Tony Jordan, who are struggling in their marriage, and a wise elderly woman, Miss Clara, who acts as a mentor to Elizabeth. The film intricately weaves a tale of love, conflict, redemption, and the transformative power of prayer. Scene 1. The opening montage. The film opens with a series of clips showcasing the intense lives of the couple, Elizabeth, a real estate agent, and Tony, a sales manager. The visuals convey their busy schedules, punctuated by phone calls and appointments, reflecting the standard facade of a bustling life. Yet, beneath the surface, tension brews. As they interact, the cracks in their marriage become evident, underscoring a disconnect that both are seemingly unaware of until the right catalyst emerges. Scene 2. Elizabeth's recollection. The scene shifts to Elizabeth in her car, reflecting on a recent argument with Tony. Flashes of their marital bliss ebb away, replaced by memories of disappointment and frustration. Her internal dialogue reveals her fears about their relationship and hints at the infidelity that Tony has succumbed to, a poignant moment that showcases her vulnerability. Scene 3. The introduction of Miss Clara. Amid Elizabeth's turmoil, she encounters Miss Clara, an elderly woman brimming with wisdom. Clara is introduced while conducting a yard sale, and her cheerful demeanor is a stark contrast to Elizabeth's troubled spirit. Clara's insightful remarks about love and commitment resonate with Elizabeth, and they strike up a conversation that hints at the deeper themes of faith and prayer. Scene 4. The first lesson in prayer. In their next meeting, Miss Clara invites Elizabeth to her home. Clara's modest abode is adorned with vibrant colors and a significant wall dedicated to prayer. This insightful space symbolizes her commitment to prayer, and as she welcomes Elizabeth, she explains the importance of having a war room, a dedicated space for prayer. She introduces Elizabeth to the concept of fighting for her marriage through prayer rather than argument, setting the stage for Elizabeth's transformation. Scene 5. Tony's increasing absences. Back at home, Tony's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. He is frequently absent, creating further fractures in their already strained marriage. The audience witnesses Elizabeth grappling with her emotions, aiming to keep her dignity intact while struggling to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the sake of their daughter, Danielle. Scene 6. The confrontation. Tensions escalate when Elizabeth decides to confront Tony about his late nights. The confrontation is charged with emotion, highlighting both characters' frustrations. Tony's defensiveness clashes with Elizabeth's hurt, leading to a bitter exchange. This pivotal moment emphasizes their fragile relationship, setting the stage for the introduction of faith as a new element in their conflict resolution. Scene 7. Elizabeth's decision. In a moment of desperation, Elizabeth turns to Miss Clara, seeking guidance. Their discussions deepen the narrative about the transformative power of prayer. Clara shares her own personal struggles and emphasizes that prayer is about surrendering one's problems to God. Inspired by Clara's strength, Elizabeth decides to give prayer a chance, setting an intention to fight for her marriage. Scene 8. Establishing the war room. Elizabeth sets up her own war room in a cramped closet, filled with notes, prayers, and memories of their life together. This act becomes symbolic of her commitment and determination to fight for her marriage spiritually. She begins writing her prayers and reflecting on her thoughts, slowly moving from despair to hope. The audience can sense her shifting mindset. Scene 9. The initial prayers. As Elizabeth prays, the film transitions into a montage where she begins to see glimpses of change. Her prayers are earnest and heartfelt, filled with both doubt and hope. The visual contrast between her struggling marriage and her growing spirituality becomes stark. These moments serve to reinforce the central theme of the film, the undeniable impact of faith. Scene 10. Tony's revelation. Around the same time, Tony faces his own struggles. A critical moment arrives when he is confronted by a colleague who highlights the importance of integrity and honesty. It serves as a wake-up call, prompting him to reflect on his choices. The internal conflict that Tony experiences creates a deep exploration of the human conscience, further driving the narrative toward redemption. Scene 11. The turning point. One fateful night, Tony arrives home late once more, and Elizabeth is prepared for another confrontation. To her surprise, she doesn't react with anger but instead expresses her love and commitment. The scene shifts dramatically as she invites him to join her in prayer, emphasizing unity and support. This moment is important as it illustrates the power of love and forgiveness, elements that are pivotal in any relationship. Scene 12. Building trust. As they begin to pray together, both Elizabeth and Tony's hearts soften. The raw vulnerability they exhibit enhances their connection. They begin to communicate more openly, addressing their feelings and fears. This honest dialogue marks a significant turning point in their relationship, illustrating the film's message about the importance of nurturing trust and understanding. Scene 13. The conflict intensifies. Just when it seems things are improving, the story takes a dramatic turn. Tony's past choices come back to haunt him as his relationship with a coworker starts to surface. Elizabeth discovers compromising texts on Tony's phone, and turmoil erupts once again. This moment tests the strength of their rekindled relationship and the efficacy of their prayers. Scene 14. Elizabeth's crisis of faith. As Elizabeth wrestles with heartbreak, she seeks comfort from Miss Clara. Clara's nurturing personality shines as she guides Elizabeth through her grief. Clara emphasizes resilience, encouraging Elizabeth to prioritize her faith, even when it feels hardest. This advice forms a bridge for Elizabeth to navigate the storm, reminding her that true strength comes from reliance on God. Scene 15. Operation Redemption. With renewed vigor, Elizabeth begins to strategize, recognizing that she must not only pray for Tony but also engage her daughter, Danielle, in understanding what a strong marriage should look like. They strategize together, reminding each other of their family values, reinforcing the theme of unity. Scene 16. Tony's moment of truth. Tony faces pressure at work from his colleagues, who tempt him to make poor decisions. He grapples with the consequences of his past actions but finds clarity in reflection. At home, he finds Lauren's prayer notes and realizes the depth of Elizabeth's commitment. This dawning awareness becomes a catalyst for his realization he must fight for his family too. Scene 17. The climactic confrontation. In a heart-rending climactic confrontation, Elizabeth and Tony have a heart-to-heart. Elizabeth expresses her feelings of betrayal, while Tony reveals his own fears and regrets. The two ultimately reach an understanding, and this profound exchange embodies the essence of their emotional journey, a journey rooted in vulnerability and deep love. Scene 18. Restoration. Having embraced a new chapter of love and commitment, the couple begins to restore their marriage. The audience can see the renewal of their vows through small acts of love and kindness as they collectively engage in family time. Elizabeth's faith in prayer and Tony's renewed commitment transform their relationship, proving that perseverance truly can pay off. Scene 19. Miss Clara's influence. The film showcases how Clara's wisdom permeates through Elizabeth's life, fostering familial bonds. Clara becomes a symbol of hope and is shown continuing her mission of prayer, teaching different women in her community how to establish their own war rooms. This moment reflects on the proactive communal spirit emphasized in the film. Scene 20. A new beginning. In the final scene, Tony and Elizabeth unite in prayer, surrounded by their family. The camera pans out as they pray together, highlighting the importance of faith in bridging their past struggles and present unity. This heartfelt moment reinforces the film's ultimate message: faith. Lessons from the War Room. Here are some of the lessons to draw from this incredible movie. Chapter 1. The cracks in the foundation. Tony and Elizabeth's marriage had seen better days. They had both become entrenched in their daily lives, losing touch with what initially brought them together. Tony, a real estate agent, was absorbed in his work, often coming home late and preoccupied. On the other hand, Elizabeth was overwhelmed with caring for their daughter, expanding her business, and dealing with the fatigue of a strained marriage. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Elizabeth came across the concept of a war room while flipping through a book at a local library. It was a strategy for prayer where one designates a space dedicated to communication with God, a place to strategize and pray for those they love and their personal battles. Feeling a stirring inside her, Elizabeth decided to convert a small closet in their home into her own war room, a private sanctuary where she could voice her fears, ask for guidance, and seek divine intervention for her marriage. Chapter 2. The birth of the war room. Elizabeth gathered supplies, a bulletin board, sticky notes, and scripture verses. She hung up pictures of her family and wrote down prayers for each of them. In this room, she could vent her frustrations about Tony and articulate her hopes for their marriage. One day while praying, Elizabeth felt a profound sense of clarity wash over her. She realized that her attitude towards her husband had contributed to their struggles. Instead of criticizing and blaming, she needed to support him and view their marriage as a partnership filled with love and respect. With that revelation, Elizabeth began to shift her perspective. Chapter 3. The importance of faith. As Elizabeth committed time to pray in her war room, she experienced a transformation. Her heart began to soften, and she felt empowered, knowing that she could bring her concerns to God. The act of praying turned her focus away from her frustrations and reignited her desire to nurture her marriage. One of the key lessons she learned was the importance of faith. Trusting in God to handle her worries created a calmness in her spirit. Instead of obsessing over what wasn't working in her marriage, she began to believe that God had a plan and could restore their relationship. Elizabeth's faith was now influencing how she treated Tony. Rather than waiting for him to change, she became proactive in loving him. Small acts of kindness, affectionate gestures, and words of encouragement filled their interactions. Though Tony was unaware of Elizabeth's prayers, he began to feel a shift in their relationship too. Chapter 4. Forgiveness and humility. One day, Elizabeth received a text message from Tony. It was an apology for being distant and neglecting her feelings. This was a breakthrough, a sign that her prayers were being answered. Elizabeth recognized the power of forgiveness, another lesson she learned in her war room. This was not just about forgiving Tony for his shortcomings, but also about forgiving herself for her part in their struggles. In her prayers, Elizabeth had asked God to help her understand Tony's perspective and to see the pain he was enduring. She began to view their marriage as a battlefield requiring humility and teamwork. Instead of holding on to past grievances, she sought to forgive and move forward, understanding that everyone makes mistakes. Chapter 5. The ripple effect. As the weeks went by, Elizabeth's efforts were not going unnoticed. Tony began to reciprocate her kindness, and a renewed sense of intimacy blossomed in their relationship. The couple began to communicate better, discussing their feelings and fears openly. They shared laughter, joy, and even moments of vulnerability. The transformation was palpable. Through her war room experience, Elizabeth learned that small changes lead to significant results. The ripple effect created by her prayers and positive actions reached beyond her marriage, affecting their family as a whole. Their daughter, witnessing the loving environment at home, thrived emotionally. The family began to engage in activities together, celebrating each other's successes and supporting one another through challenges. Chapter 6. Strengthening Community Bonds. Elizabeth's transformation did not stop within the walls of her home. Inspired by her experience, she began to reach out to her friends and family, sharing her story and the concept of the war room. Several women in her community were going through similar struggles, and Elizabeth invited them to create their own war rooms. They formed a support group, praying not just for their marriages but for each other's strengths and challenges. Through prayer, they created a bond that turned into an uplifting sisterhood where they could share their worries and triumphs. This community strengthened Elizabeth's resolve and faith, reinforcing the lesson that one is never alone in their struggles. The power of collective prayer became a foundation for support, enabling the women to lift each other up and foster a culture of love and encouragement. Chapter 7. Facing New Challenges. Just as Elizabeth and Tony were finding their footing in their marriage, a new challenge arose in the form of a financial crisis. Tony's real estate company was hit hard by a downturn in the market, and he was faced with the tough decision of layoffs, cuts, and financial pressure. Doubts and fears resurfaced, threatening the peace they had just begun to cultivate. Feeling the weight of this new challenge, Elizabeth turned back to her war room, this time praying not just for their marriage but for the wisdom and direction needed during difficult times. She reminded herself that faith was not only for good times but was essential for facing life's storms. Elizabeth encouraged Tony to lean on faith as well, and together, they prayed for guidance and strength. Chapter 8. Learning to rely on each other. During this difficult time, Elizabeth and Tony realized they had to rely on one another more than ever. They communicated about finances, made plans together, and even brainstormed creative ways to support each other. The war room lessons on teamwork became crucial as they learned to navigate this challenge hand in hand. Tony was moved to see Elizabeth's unwavering support and faith. Knowing that she was not merely praying for him but also actively participating in finding solutions fostered a deeper connection between them. It reinforced the lesson that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness, and that seeking help from one another was essential for overcoming life's obstacles. Chapter 9. The Return of Joy. Eventually, the storm began to calm. Slowly, Tony's efforts to revitalize his real estate work began to pay off, and new opportunities arose. The financial stress that once threatened to shake their foundation transformed into lessons about resilience and hope. The couple emerged stronger, confident, and more united than ever. Their journey taught them that joy could be found even in the midst of challenges. Elizabeth's war room had become a place not just for supplication, but for celebrating victories, big and small. She had learned to express gratitude in her prayers, highlighting the importance of maintaining a joyful heart, even during tough times. Chapter 10. The Lifelong Impact of Prayer. Months later, as they sat together in their living room, surrounded by evidence of their enduring love and commitment, Elizabeth looked back on how far they had come. The war room was no longer just a closet filled with prayers, it had become a symbol of their journey, a testament to the divine intervention, love, and faith that restored their marriage. The lessons they learned were now embedded in their lifestyle. Prayer was no longer a last resort, it was a daily practice. Elizabeth and Tony understood the value of being intentional in their relationship, continuously nurturing it. The legacy of the war room. In the dim light of the spacious room, the air was thick with a mixture of urgency and hope. The walls were adorned with prayer requests, strategic maps, and photographs of families placed to inspire faith and focus. This was no ordinary room, it was the war room, a sanctuary where battles were fought not with weapons, but through prayer and devotion. It belonged to Elizabeth Jordan, a woman who had discovered a new purpose through her recent struggles. Elizabeth sat at the desk, her fingers tracing the edges of a well-worn Bible. It had become her lifeline, an anchor in a sea of relational turmoil and personal uncertainty. Her marriage to Tony was hanging by a thread, and she was filled with a sense of despair. Yet, deep within her, a flicker of determination had ignited. She had seen firsthand how prayer could change lives and reshape destinies, and now, she was ready to take a stand. As the sun set outside the window, casting warm hues across the room, she remembered a time when her life seemed simpler. In the early days of her marriage, it had been easy to love and support each other. They had shared dreams, laughter, and an unbreakable bond. But as the years passed, stress, work commitments, and personal struggles had seeped into their lives, eroding the foundation they had built together. What once had been secure felt shaky and uncertain. The catalyst for change had come in the form of a conversation with Miss Clara, an elderly woman who had lived her faith quietly but powerfully. Their unexpected friendship had blossomed, and Miss Clara had planted the seeds of prayer in Elizabeth's heart, encouraging her to turn to God instead of allowing bitterness to take root in her marriage. Elizabeth, our battles are not with flesh and blood, Miss Clara had said, her wise eyes piercing through Elizabeth's uncertainty. They are spiritual. You need to fight for your marriage on your knees. That night, Elizabeth sat in her war room, surrounded by notes and scriptures Miss Clara had shared. She took a deep breath and began to pour her heart into prayer, confronting her fears and insecurities, and asking God to intervene in her marriage. With each moment, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. She was seeking not just the restoration of her relationship, but also the transformation of her own heart. Weeks turned into months, and Elizabeth's journey was not an easy one. Each day was fraught with challenges as she battled the temptation to despair. Tony remained distant, consumed by his work and his own struggles. Yet, Elizabeth's commitment to prayer never waned. She learned to pray with specificity, asking God for tangible changes in her life. I pray for Tony, she would whisper fervently, her eyes glistening with tears. I pray that he finds peace, that he feels your love, that he comes home to us. As she prayed, she also took small steps toward implementing changes in their home. Elizabeth began writing notes of appreciation to Tony, leaving them for him to find amidst his busy life. She initiated conversations about their dreams, hopes, and even fears. Over time, these gestures became a lifeline, a bridge slowly building towards reconciliation. The turning point came one fateful night. Having just returned from a long day at work, Tony entered the house with a heavy sigh. He was exhausted, and the weight of his responsibilities pressed on his shoulders like never before. As he passed by Elizabeth's war room, he noticed the light flickering through the door. Curiosity piqued, he walked in. The room felt different, filled with a palpable sense of hope and warmth. Elizabeth was on her knees, pouring her heart out in prayer. In that moment, something shifted within him. He watched her, taking in the sight of a woman fervently seeking God and healing, and the image penetrated the walls he had built around his heart. Elizabeth sensed his presence before he spoke. When she looked up, surprise lit her face. Tony, she breathed, caught off guard. What are you doing? He asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and concern. There was a vulnerability in his tone that sparked a glimmer of hope in her heart. I'm praying for us, Elizabeth replied, her conviction unwavering. I'm asking God to help us find our way back to each other. His defenses began to crack. Why should I care? Haven't you given up on me? Never, she said. I've been fighting for you, for our family. I know we've lost our way, but we can find it again. We can rebuild what was lost. Despite the raw pain in his heart, her words resonated with something deep inside him. For the first time in years, Tony felt seen, understood. Slowly, he stepped forward, the weight of resentment beginning to lift. I don't know how to fix this. Elizabeth reached for him, her heart racing. We'll figure it out together. But we have to start with prayer, seeking God as our foundation. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter. They both knelt in the war room, hands clasped tightly in prayer, sharing their fears and dreams until the weight of unspoken truths was finally lifted. Days turned into weeks, and with each prayer, they rebuilt their relationship, brick by brick. They attended counseling together, and slowly but surely, they began to truly listen to one another. Trust, once broken, began to heal. Laughter filled the hallways once again, and shared moments created new memories. In this process, Elizabeth learned that the true power of the war room was not merely in her isolation but in calling on her husband to stand alongside her. Renewed communication redefined their connection, and together they learned to navigate the challenges of life hand in hand. One evening, after a long week filled with work and stress, they sat together in their living room, reflecting on their journey. Tony looked across at Elizabeth and the warmth in his heart surged once more. Honestly, I didn't think we'd make it, he admitted, his voice low but steady. But watching you pray, watching you fight, changed something in me. I learned from you too, Elizabeth replied, a smile lighting her face. We fought hard, but we fought together. That made all the difference. Their eyes locked, and she could see the sincerity in his gaze. It was a newfound joy, a spark of intimacy that they thought had been lost forever. And in that moment, they both realized that they were no longer alone, they had each other, and with God's grace, they could face anything. As time continued to pass, Elizabeth took part in a women's retreat organized by her church. Inspired by her own transformation, she began to share her story of struggle and renewal with other women in the community. They gathered in their own war rooms, each sharing their battles, offering support, and standing in prayer for one another. Weeks turned into months and months into a year. Elizabeth's passion grew, and her faith deepened. She knew firsthand the power of a prayerful life, and it was a truth she was determined to pass on. She became a mentor, meeting with women and helping them unfurl their own war rooms, encouraging them to fight for their marriages, their families, and their dreams. One crisp fall morning, as leaves turned gold and caramel hues, Elizabeth stood before a small group of women, her heart fuller than ever. Prayer is not just a cry for help, it is a declaration of faith, she proclaimed. It is the quiet power that can shift the hearts of those we love and revive our spirits. In the back of the gathering, Tony watched with pride. He had seen Elizabeth transform not just through the challenges they faced, but in her commitment to serve others. The woman he once thought was lost had emerged a warrior of faith. Through those trials, they had each become better partners, friends, and eventually, a team. That day, Elizabeth felt deeply grateful for Miss Clara. A review of War Room. When a film manages to transcend mere entertainment and instead touches the very fabric of human experience, it deserves more than just a review, it deserves a celebration. War Room, directed by Alex Kendrick and co-written with Stephen Kendrick, is one such film. At first glance, one might view it as just another Christian drama, but a deeper dive reveals a tapestry of faith, the struggles of modern life, and the transformative power of prayer. The setting and context. Set in a contemporary suburban backdrop, War Room tells the intertwined stories of the Jordan family, primarily focusing on the crumbling marriage of Elizabeth and Tony Jordan. The film's warmth emerges through its earnest portrayal of real-life challenges faced by couples today. Elizabeth, a successful real estate agent, is wrestling with the traumas of a broken relationship, feeling the weight of her husband's emotional distance. Tony, on the other hand, is embodying the struggles of financial demands and workplace temptations that threaten to derail the sanctity of their marriage. This premise introduces not only a relatable conflict but serves as a gateway into the deeper themes of faith, redemption, and the power of prayer. The movie shines brightest through its secondary character, Miss Clara, an elderly woman with a fierce spirit and an unwavering faith in God. It is through her that Elizabeth begins a transformative journey into the world of strategic prayer, an essential theme of the movie. Miss Clara's character embodies the idea that age and experience can guide the younger generation. Herein lies one of the film's central messages: the wisdom captured in prayer transcends individual circumstances and connects generations. Character depth and development. The performances in War Room are both heartfelt and compelling. Shirer shines in her role as Elizabeth, bringing a relatable vulnerability to a woman on the brink of despair yet yearning for hope. Her struggle to maintain her facade of strength while silently grappling with her failing marriage speaks to many viewers who have faced similar circumstances. T.C. Stallings as Tony Jordan delivers an equally powerful performance. His character arc is a masterclass in authenticity, capturing the complexities of a man wrestling with temptation and guilt. As the unfolding story reveals his inner turmoil, viewers are drawn into his journey, rooting for his redemption and reconciliation with Elizabeth. Together, the Jordan family's dynamic highlights how unresolved issues within a marriage can seep into every aspect of life, affecting not just the couple but also their family and community. This portrayal resonates deeply, reminding us that we are often not alone in our struggles. One of the most touching aspects of the film is the evolution of Elizabeth and Tony's relationship. The initial tension is palpable, however, as they delve into prayer and open their hearts to God's guidance, viewers witness their gradual transformation. Their journey embodies hope, showing that healing can emerge from the ashes of despair. The central message of prayer. At its core, War Room champions the power of prayer, a theme that often appears in Christian films but is given a refreshing take here. The film invites viewers to reconsider the importance of not just praying but praying intentionally and strategically. Miss Clara introduces Elizabeth to a War Room, a space dedicated to prayer, where battles are fought not against each other, but against the unseen forces threatening their lives. The concept of the war room is profound in its simplicity. Miss Clara emphasizes that prayer is more than just asking for favors, it's about building a relationship with God, understanding His will, and fighting the spiritual battles that can ensnare us. Through her mentoring, Elizabeth learns to approach her challenges with a renewed perspective, focusing not on her spouse's shortcomings, but on her own heart in response to God. One of the cinematic choices that I found particularly effective is the myriad of prayer scenes interspersed throughout the film. These moments exhibit raw emotional power. They remind us that even amidst chaos, we can find solace in connection with the divine. Encouraging the audience to visualize their battles in life, the film fosters a sense of empowerment, urging viewers to take their concerns to God rather than allowing them to fester. Relatable struggles. War Room does an excellent job portraying the battles we face in both our personal and professional lives. Many audience members may see reflections of their struggles in the Jordan family. The pressures of modern life, from financial strain to the distractions of technology, are depicted authentically. The film does not shy away from presenting the ugly sides of relationships, it embraces them fully, showcasing the complexities of human emotion and interaction. The depiction of marital discord serves as a reminder that brittle connections can often lead to despair. Audiences are not merely observing the Jordan family, they are witnessing a story that mirrors their own lives. This relatability enhances the overall experience, encouraging viewers to reflect on their relationships and the importance of nurturing them through faith. Moreover, the film's treatment of ethical dilemmas in the workplace highlights the need for integrity in situations rife with temptation. Tony's struggles with his boss and the moral decisions he faces resonate with anyone who has found themselves in ethically murky waters. The film does right by these characters, allowing them to confront their moral failures and emerge stronger through prayer and accountability. A community of support. An underlying theme within War Room is the necessity of community and support. Miss Clara stands as a beacon of hope not just for Elizabeth but for the audience as well. She exemplifies the profound difference that one individual can make in the life of another through encouragement and guidance. The concept of having a mentor, or someone to help navigate the stormy seas of life, is a message that resonates across ages and denominations. The narrative also emphasizes the importance of vulnerability. It demonstrates how opening up about one's struggles can lead to growth and healing. As the relationships within the film evolve, and the characters lean on one another, viewers are encouraged to seek similar connections in their own lives. The communal aspect of faith, a theme often explored in spiritual narratives, brings depth to War Room. The film suggests that prayer is not merely an individual act, it's magnified when shared among loved ones. It underscores the idea that when others join in prayer, the strength of their faith can uplift those struggling to find their footing. Visuals and cinematic elements. War Room does not rely solely on an emotional narrative. Visually, it is a film crafted with thoughtfulness and intention. The warm hues and intimate settings create a cozy atmosphere that draws viewers into the Jordan family's lives. The cinematography captures poignant moments, immersing the audience in both the joy and heartaches of the characters' journeys. Further, the pacing of the film is effective. It balances moments of tension with lighthearted interactions that illustrate the joys of family life. There are scenes that elicit laughter, such as the quirky dynamics between the Jordan family and Miss Clara. These moments of levity serve as gentle reminders of the beauty within struggle, making the emotional beats more impactful. Conclusion: a journey worth taking. As the credits rolled on, War Room, I sat in silence, a wave of contemplation sweeping over me. The film is not perfect. Some may argue that it simplifies complex issues, or that certain plot points veer into predictability. However, it ultimately succeeds in delivering a powerful message with clarity, the notion that prayer can be a formidable tool in not just surviving, but thriving amidst life's tribulations. In a world often overshadowed by negativity and discord, War Room offers a beacon of hope. It reminds us that every relationship faces trials, but there is strength in surrendering our struggles to God. The film celebrates faith, not as a mere concept to be pondered, but as an active, dynamic force that can transform lives and relationships. War Room is more than a film, it is an invitation to consider the power of prayer in our own lives. It dares us to ask ourselves, how can we create our own war rooms? How can we fight the battles we face with faith as our armor? With its heartfelt message, relatable characters, and spiritual depth, kudos to the Kendrick brothers for a job well done.